And welcome to the Quickie Beagle. As always, I'm Dave Cash, and this is the Ins and Outs Vinyl Review. Yes, welcome to the Ins and Outs Vinyl Review, the show where I cast a critical ear across 2 records from my stock down at Not Just Vintage and 1 more from my own personal collection. This week, I kid you not, we have 3 absolute rock bangers. These 3 records are instantly recognisable and they are filled with some of the best songs in rock and roll history. And let me tell you, I have to issue an apology. And so one of these records will be something of an apology to the Rolling Stones, because last week I was kind of overly critical. I probably picked a poor record to review the Stones for the first time on this show. So this week I'll be making up for that. I'll be unzipping one of their albums to make up for it. So the first record up today is one that was requested on our Facebook page. And don't forget, you can do the same. You can request it right here on YouTube. You can even request it over on Instagram or on our Facebook page if you want to see us review a record. And this record was recommended or requested by Rob Hodge. And Rob requested Band on the Run by Wings, or Paul McCartney and Wings. And I have to say, when this was suggested, I was a little bit dismayed. I've always felt, perhaps unfairly, or certainly unfairly, that Wings were a little bit too soft rock for my liking. But let me tell you, I was surprised, very, very pleasantly surprised by this record. So much so that, although this one will be going into the shop in the next day or two, I'm also keeping an eye out for one for me to keep for my collection because I enjoyed it that much. So thank you very much, Rob. This record is Paul McCartney's most successful record since leaving the Beatles, and it was also probably one of the most difficult for them to produce. Just before heading off to Nigeria to record this album, the band lost 2 of its members. Denny Sewell and Henry McCulloch both left the band, which left them as a trio. And when they landed, they found that the studio in Nigeria was really, really poor and not suitable, or barely suitable for their purposes. And not only that, they were robbed at knife point. The McCartneys were out and about carrying their demo tapes for this very album, and they were stolen from them because they were robbed at knife point. And I've got to tell you, at that point, many bands would just think, forget it. But no, Paul McCartney stepped up to the plate. He took over the instruments. I think it was bass guitar and drums that were left empty by McCulloch and Sewell. And he played those, as well as being the main vocalist on most of the songs. And you've got to say that is a work ethic to be admired. Despite all the difficulties producing this album, I've got to say, it doesn't affect the sound, or at least not in a negative way. The first record on this album is also the title record, Band on the Run. And by all accounts, it came about after a discussion when Paul McCartney was still a Beatle with George Harrison, who effectively believed that the corporate structure was keeping the Beatles prisoner, and he wanted to escape. And this song essentially tells the story. It starts off, it basically starts with 3 false starts. First of all, you get this quite dour, almost sorrowful beginning where the band are in prison. It starts to cheer up a little bit with the second change as the band begins to think maybe we can escape, and then finally they go through with it, and then the song kicks in proper whilst the band are on the run. And it's such a good, fun, interesting song, tells a great story. Follow that up with track 2, which is Jet. It was also one of their most successful singles from this album, which is a great rock track, and straight away you know you're in for a treat when you start playing this record. Now let's talk about this cover. This cover features some real A-listers for the day who were probably all convinced that Paul McCartney was producing his best work since the Beatles and wants to be a part of this, or it could also be that he was an A-lister too and he talked his mates into it. Either way, I'm not sure what the story is behind that. I'm sure you can search Wikipedia for it. But the cover features none other than, from Hollywood, James Coburn, from Hammer Studios, Christopher Lee, from chat shows, Parky, Michael Parkinson. You also got on there, who we got on there? Oh, Linda McCartney there. You've also got John Conte, who else? Kenny Lynch, just here. So this record is fantastic inside and out. I have to thank Rob for recommending this one to me, because now I've got this in my life properly. I'd always skipped over it. I'd never treated it with the respect it deserves. It turns out this is a great album, and I'll be absolutely delighted to have it in the shop. I've had several copies before and they always sell, but the next one comes in, mine. So get this while you can. This also still has the insert inside, I think. Yeah, the Polaroid inserts. The record itself, there's a few light marks on it, but nothing to spoil that sound. The cover has a few creases around the edge, but again, if you're looking to buy this record to listen to, go ahead. So it's a 1971 original on EMI Records. It'll be in Not Just Vintage by the time you see this, unless it's already sold, in which case it won't. The next record, if you've never seen it, you clearly haven't been looking, because this is Led Zeppelin. Despite receiving some harsh reviews from the critics at the time of its release in 1969, this record went on to launch a rock phenomena and made household names of the likes of Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones. Many people around the world know of this simply through that Zeppelin cover. And the Hindenburg and airships like it were very much where the band got their name. During a conversation, apparently, the band were joking about how their music would go down like a lead balloon. Somebody then said, well, yeah, like a Led Zeppelin. Next thing you know, everybody's nodding, oh, very good, very good, very good. And the rest is rock and roll history. As with many of their contemporaries, Led Zeppelin drew upon the blues for inspiration to flesh out their sound. And a few examples exist better on this record than Dazed and Confused, How Many More Times, and You Shook Me. The band didn't entirely rely on the blues. After all, when it comes to the likes of Communication Breakdown, they head into heavy rock, almost punk before its time, and of course a slightly more laid back but traditional rock with Good Times, Bad Times. So in conclusion, not the best record in the world, but certainly right up there, and it's a great confident start for a band that will go on to become one of the most influential bands in rock and roll or even music history. These guys deserve their place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they also deserve their place down at Not Just Vintage. Though they won't be there long, Led Zeppelin stuff never does, especially this one. There's always somebody that will pick it up very, very quickly. So it'll be reasonably priced as always, really nice record, and if you have a record collection but you don't have this, then you don't have a record collection. To my shame, I chose Undercover as the first Rolling Stones album to review on this show, and in that same show I also suggested that the best album to introduce somebody to the Rolling Stones for the first time would be the Get Stoned compilation album, which is brilliant, but I take that back. I'd like to introduce you to Sticky Fingers. This is one of the Stones' most famous albums, not least because of its Andy Warhol designed cover. The cover itself, by the way, was responsible for damaging many, many records, especially in the early pressings, because this here is a real working zip. And when you undo it, you get the view of somebody in their trolleys. But the zip itself would damage the record, so in later issues, the zip was replaced with an entirely photographic cover. But this one is kept in my collection because you don't come across the zip very often, so I thought I'll keep hold of that one. This is very much a blues rock and country rock album. The country rock side of it comes out beautifully with Wild Horses, which I think helps to elevate this album a little bit above many of the many other releases that the Stones have done. And the country music sort of takes a more mundane turn with likes of Dead Flowers, which is not one of my favourite tracks on there, but highlights how well the album utilises the country rock sound. The blues really kicks in with the likes of You Gotta Move and I've Got the Blues, which combine the blues and country and western, or particularly country, quite smoothly, and really confirms that this album takes a southern United States influence. The word I'm looking for here is influence. Just taking a look at the back side, cheeky. As you can see, there's no track listings on the back. The track listings are on the inside on this insert, which, as you can see, also features the famous Jagger mouth that's become the logo of the Rolling Stones. This record also features the likes of Brown Sugar, which is a very famous and brilliant Stone song, along with Can't You Hear Me Knocking. This record will be in my collection, not down at the shop, which I'm very sorry about, but I love this record, and it's actually a little bit damaged, and so I wouldn't really want to put it in the shop. When this goes in the shop, sorry, I don't mean to keep pointing at a gentleman's bottom. I'll point at his crotch instead. When this goes into the shop, it will be a great example of this record. So keep your eyes out. Lots of Rolling Stones coming in, by the way. So that's it for the show. All three records are done and dusted. It's been a pleasure listening to them in preparation for the show, especially the Led Zeppelin one, although I have to say I know the Led Zeppelin one backward and front because I have heard it so many times. I play it at least once a week, and it's even on my Spotify for long journeys. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget, you can recommend or suggest a record for a review, just as Rob did earlier on in the show. And you can also hit us up by checking out our Facebook page. You can check out our Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. We sell rarities over on Discogs. And you can visit us in person down at Not Just Vintage, 136 Oxton Road in Birkenhead. And don't forget to subscribe. Not only that, hit the bell icon, because the bell icon will notify you every time I upload something new. And I really hope you will join us again. Let your friends know, by the way. Let everyone know. We've only got about 16 subscribers. I want at least 17 by this time next week. Take care, guys. This record... Oh, the cat's scratching the garden furniture. Barkley, psst, psst, psst. Pack it in. Pack it in.